Okay, so hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining me in another episode of Before the Ink Dries. I am joined by my very good friend, Fiza, who is also my project partner in the Scars We Ink in Gold, which the pre-orders for will be linked in the description down below. Fiza, would you like to say hi?
Yes, I would. I don't know why I said it like that. I've been waiting to say hi. I just didn't get a chance to. But hello, everyone. And like M&A said, we are ready for pre-order. So don't forget to grab yourself and a friend a copy.
Yes, definitely. And today we actually, as you all know, probably Fiz as a writer and I am an artist. So we wanted to talk a little bit about feeling blocked as a creator. So more specifically, creator's block and finding motivation. So I thought it would be interesting to have Fiza join me to talk about this because I thought she could give me the perspective of a writer and like how a writer goes through writer's block, how they deal with it, and I could potentially give the perspective of an artist.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good idea and something we should be talking about because oftentimes when you're suffering from creator's block, you think it's the end and you can no longer create, which I'm pretty sure most of us have felt, but it's not the end and you do get through it eventually.
And it is definitely frustrating to go through because, as artists, sometimes that's our only outlet, right, to create. When
Exactly,
you feel
yes.
blocked and you can't create, then it definitely gets frustrating because you're itching, right? Like you're itching to create, you're itching to write something, but you find that it's just there's either no inspiration or you just have no idea what to do.
Exactly. And I think you bring up a really good point about inspiration because, especially given the times we are in now, some of us are not even leaving our houses. So, if we're stuck in the same place for the entire day, this might really limit our inspiration. And because of this, it's just harder to create.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I guess that point kind of goes to like talk a little bit about changing your environment or learning things, seeing things, hearing things even, because a lot of people think inspiration has to be, you look at an art piece and then you get inspired by that art piece. Honestly, even like I went for a walk for one of my extracurriculars and I saw mushrooms growing in trees,
Oh,
right?
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and like the moment I saw that, I was like, wow, I want to paint this. And like I took a photo, right?
Wow.
Because it was
Yeah.
my first time seeing like a tree, like there's a tree trunk and then there's like half of a
Uh-huh.
mushroom. I was like, how is this
Nice.
possible? And so even just something like that definitely helps. But
Exactly. Yeah.
I also want to mention that sometimes creators' block could be triggered by things that are happening in your life. And
Mhm.
in this podcast, we are not going to be talking about, specifically those elements. So if you find that it could potentially be because of a life event where you're struggling to create or because of your mental health, um, we are not necessarily going to be giving advice on that because I don't think it's our place to do so. But
No, M&A. It is our place to do so. Do drop us a message if you are going through a tough time. We are specialized therapists and we are here to help you, both with degrees in psychology. Don't
uh,
worry.
the sarcasm, that's sarcasm, by the way. Like, please, if you do need help, please do reach out for a help from a professional. But we're more so just going to be talking about that general feeling of maybe not being satisfied with what you create or just lacking motivation or inspiration. And yeah, Fiza, I just wanted to ask, like, have you ever, I think this is a good point to start.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt writer's block or, you also make art sometimes, so maybe artists.
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely. So even though you said we're not going to mention other elements, I will just mention this small thing where actually a couple of months ago, I was writing final exams. And even though I wanted to create, I was so focused on those that every time I tried to write something, it just wasn't working. And afterwards, when I finally had a month to myself to create anything I'd like, I was unable to. And I was like, what the heck is going on? But eventually I just realized it has to do with a lot of self-doubt too, because at the same time I was reading other people's works and seeing so many books being published and whatnot, and I was just like, I'm not at the same level.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not as good as them. And when you start doubting yourself like this, you start thinking, you lose inspiration,
Mm-hmm.
because everything that you write no longer seems to match up to what they're doing. Even if they were taking your idea and writing the same thing, you might still think they did it better. And this just adds on to writer's block for me, or just creator's block, and it just adds on and on and on. And then it's this never ending cycle. So now you might be wondering how I got over this. I will tell you, don't worry, I'm sharing this with you.
Go ahead.
Um, I sometimes, sometimes what I did was I spent nights watching TV.
Mm-hmm.
Now you might think as a writer I would be reading, but I was also going through this phase where I could not read. So what I did instead was I watched TV, and while watching, I looked at the characters. I figured out what I liked about them and what I didn't like, while still trying to enjoy the plot.
Mm-hmm.
And based on that, I tried writing myself a couple of lines. When that didn't work, I moved on to writing poems. When that didn't work, I told myself to relax. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. And so I spent the rest of my days finishing a season of like some show. Like, it was like an hour long each episode, and I finished it in like a couple of days. So yeah, that's what I did when I was going through writer's block.
Like, what's very interesting, that something you've mentioned, is comparison, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting to see that no matter which area of the arts you're in, so whether it be writing or visual arts, performing arts, whatever it may be, that comparison element and that, you know, little doubt and insecurity exists. And I think just,
Exactly.
that other people also go through that could be very comforting. And I found that in those instances where I do compare myself to other people's, my art to other people's art, I like to recognize that their art is just completely different than mine, right? Like, of course, there may be similarities, but at the end of the day, it's completely different. And it's like comparing apples to oranges, or like whatever the
Exactly.
is, right?
Yeah.
Can't really compare it. But what I can do is that I can steal. And I don't mean like tracing, of course not,
No, no. Yeah.
elements that I enjoy in that piece. Maybe it's the line weight or the color or that the way they drew eyes or birds or whatever it may be, and applying that to my art pieces. And another
Yes,
thing,
exactly.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention, you mentioning that just reminded me of how I also found a way to overcome my writer's block by going on walks with my friend. And when we were going on walks, she would tell me stories about some embarrassing things she's done in life. And I found myself joking about how I could basically write a story on it. And because of that, I started writing a story. And I was also in love with this show growing up about a princess and whatnot. And I decided I was going to take that plot, but make it my own. Sorry, I did not steal the plot. I meant the idea of finding the lost princess, because that's so common. The lost princess comes home and she can't adjust to her life as a royal, and she hates it, but then eventually she starts liking it. And I just took that idea, like you did, stole it. Sorry, I'm trying so hard not to look at your face.
I'm sorry, my cat came into my room and I'm like trying to keep my cat away.
Yeah, no worries. It's just sorry. No, I'm going to focus on myself so that I don't see you while I speak. And then basically I also stole that idea. I'm putting air quotes around stole, and tried making my own. Once I tried making it my own, I changed up the plot so that it fits into a story I could actually write.
Nice. I like that. Just, taking inspiration from so many different things.
Yeah, it's definitely fun.
My apologies for the background noise. My cat is being a little bit weird at the moment. But something you had also mentioned was, sorry, let me just open the door for my cat.
No worries, take your time. Until we're waiting for M&A, we'll take this moment to remind you to pre-order our book. If you've forgotten where to find the link, it's available on our Instagrams in the description for this YouTube video. And also, while we're waiting for M&A, do check out our YouTube video we made on my channel. You will see M&A being a little less supportive of her book, but it's all right. At the end, she realizes her mistake and she is very supportive of her book. So do wait for that. Check that out.
I would give spoilers. I would like to send myself, like go check out the video. It's not at all how Fiza says it is.
No, don't listen to M&A.
Yeah, but when you were talking a while back, you were also mentioning like watching a TV show, right? You mentioned taking a break, right? And I think that is something we tend to really overlook because, say writing or creating an art piece, it's stuff that we're passionate about. And we think
Exactly.
that because we're passionate about it, we won't ever get tired of it, right?
Yes.
Or like it is something that we should continually do because it's what gives us joy. But I think it's important to recognize that just like anything in life, you need a break from this, right? Like, of course, other than eating food and drinking and things like
Yeah.
that, where you shouldn't take a break from. But other than that, like with the other stuff in life, such as studying, going to work, um, even working out, right? Like you need rest.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so I know that, I don't know if this is in the writing community as well, but there's this myth going, well, I wouldn't say myth, but there's this common um, thing that's being said talking about practice every day, right? Or practice
Yeah.
10,000 hours.
Oh yeah, definitely a thing in writing too.
Mhm. And so I would just want to say that, yeah, maybe there's that 10,000 rule. I actually watched a video and maybe I can talk about that a bit later, but um, you know, it's okay to take things at your own pace. It's okay to not see immediate growth in your skill sets. And it's okay to not be able to practice or make art or write every day.
Yeah. No, you mentioning that is a really good point because um I think it also sets this mindset, this whole idea of having a passion that without this passion, we might not be anything anymore. Like
Mm-hmm.
when I was going through my writer's block, this was so severe that I genuinely for a moment thought that now that I can't write, I'm no longer a writer and I won't be able to write for the rest of my life. And at one point I said, okay, this is the end. That's it. I was being a little dramatic, but you genuinely have these feelings when people are continuously like saying, how can you not do something that you are so passionate about every single day? How can you just get tired of it? How can you be taking a break? Like it's normal to take breaks, and I think we should normalize these type of things because it's really necessary. Like, don't
Yeah,
we go on vacations?
like I think there's this belief that, if you are doing, because, a lot of people believe that the arts and like visual arts, performing arts, writing, all that stuff, it's um it won't get you anywhere, right? Like there's that belief. And so if you are somebody who is actively writing or making art and you are somebody who has this passion, then the expectation is that you better get so good at it that you can make a living out of it.
Exactly, yeah.
And like it just seems very it just goes back to hustle culture and capitalism, honestly. It goes
Yeah,
back to the idea that everything that you do has to have a monetary gain, right?
exactly. Yeah. And that brings me to my favorite saying that I like to put everywhere. Is the worth of a passion defined by the profit it produces?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think it's very important to consider because growing up, I won a lot of contests for writing, different contests, but every time someone would ask me, okay, how much money did you make?
Mm,
And I'd be like, sometimes it was no money, and I'd be like, nothing. It was, I got a certificate. And then they'd be like, no, that doesn't work. And just I think it belittles your passion. And that's something that might also play into writer's block and seeking inspiration, basically. Because when we start thinking that our passion is defined by the money, then really we're not really passionate about it anymore because now we're focused on the monetary gain.
mm-hmm. 100%. Yeah, and I think, I don't know, it's a difficult thing because um, there's so many things that could contribute to artist's block, right? Like there's also the element of failing, right? That fear of failing. And again, that kind of goes back to society, right? That idea
Yeah,
of, I mean, when you're in the arts, you already hear the fact that art in itself to others or like pursuing art is a failure, which
yeah,
I disagree with. But you hear that, and then if you put something out there that's less than, right, anything
yeah.
else that has maybe a potentially lower quality,
Uh-huh.
it feels like a failure, right, like you feel like a failure. And I don't
Exactly.
know, it's such a complicated topic.
No, it really is. Sorry, before we continue on this point, I do want to mention that you said that we weren't going to talk about the elements that cause writer's block when you went ahead and mentioned one. Again, which brings me to my point. If you are suffering from anything, do contact us. We are specialized in this field. If you're not
No, we are
comfortable
not.
contacting,
We
we
are not.
are. And
She is joking. I just want to emphasize that. Yeah, but going back to the topic, did you want to add anything?
right, yeah. I'm just thinking. Sorry, give me a minute. I was thinking about something. Why did I distract myself like that?
Take your time.
Oh, right. This is my point that I wanted to mention. So I also have a blog, which I mentioned this on, Dreaming in Ink, and I just wanted to mention it again for those of who don't know. So basically, I found now that we are talking about writer's block, creative block, and ways to get over it, I was thinking one thing that might be helpful, and I wanted to know your opinion. I do this for writing a lot. Basically, it's that I go out and seek advice from people. I ask them things about their life. Like I mentioned, I would go on walks with my friend, listen to her stories, and this was because I wanted to be inspired by something. And because we both like to focus on human behavior, I think I wonder how it is for you. But I like to go up, ask people, or watch other people do things, or maybe even just sit outside somewhere and just observe people in their ordinary lives, just to get an idea of how I can twist things around, of the things that they might be going through, just basically considering their perspectives before trying to inspire myself to write something.
For sure. I think mine is kind of similar because my art also focuses a lot on human behavior and human nature. And I do get inspired a lot by the events that happen around me. But I think what inspires me is unfortunately the news, right? Like I
Yeah,
see stuff on the news, I read some headlines, and immediately I'm like, this sucks.
yeah,
I
no,
hate that this is happening. And sometimes it's so difficult for me to convey just how I feel about that, right?
yeah.
And so what I do is that I put it into paper. I just draw. In terms of the symbols and the subjects that I use,
Hmm.
those are usually related to what I have seen. right? Like I noticed that sometimes I will be so drawn to, like, say, drawing chess pieces, right?
Yeah.
And I won't know why. I was like, I don't know why I'm so suddenly interested in drawing chess pieces. But it's because my subconscious has stored this image that I had seen from, say, a movie or a show, right?
Oh, nice.
And so it just pops up, and for a moment, I'm like obsessed with chess pieces. Or it would be something like horses, right?
Mhm.
I remember when I was in middle school, we had this like unit um, about, it was a historical unit, right? And naturally, it just for some reason, I was drawn to horses as we were continuously talking about history and whatnot. And
Nice.
so subjects like that, or, objects in my art pieces are generally just things that my subconscious has stored.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. No, I think I agree with that. I think I do that too. But more mine is more also not just looking at the news, but I also look at things in the ordinary life. Like I remember once for my story, I was trying to be inspired by one of my characters it was a mother and I was trying to figure out her perspective. And I met this woman who told me that she was going through some stuff at home. So basically what I and then I remember watching I couldn't do anything to help her because well I was listening to her story and then she told me and she said no there's nothing that can be done and blah 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 and then she was leaving and I remember watching her from the window while she was leaving with her kids and her husband and she didn't see me but I was like so inspired by that I was like oh if I put this into my story, I get to show the mother's perspective on how, like, you might be trying things out, but like it's not working. And basically, sometimes I'm going through a phase where I don't know where the scenes fit, but I just put them in just in case. When I am going through writer's block, I can pull out those scenes and see if I can work with them. So basically, I do these type of things.
Oh, I like that. I think like how you store ideas at a side, like some
Yeah.
artists do something similar where um, they they will do like very rough sketching, right? Like they'll just put down ideas like that, and they take on those ideas when they're in the mood for it, right? Because
Yeah.
I noticed that the pieces I create when I'm feeling happy versus when I'm feeling a little down are quite different. So
Yeah.
obviously the piece or the sketch that you take on is also going to be different based off of that.
Exactly. No, that's a good point. Which makes me question actually when I am not feeling so good, I tend to not be able to create. Well, I can't write stories. What I can do is write poems. Does that like happen to you where you can do something when you're sad but not when you're I mean you can do certain things when you're happy but not when you're sad, like in terms of creating art?
That's very interesting. Let me think about it. I think when I'm stressed, I can't make finished pieces, but what I do is I work in my sketchbook. Like that's what I noticed. When I'm like highly anxious, highly stressed, it's usually I usually just gravitate towards my sketchbook.
Yeah.
Normally I paint, so like I don't really do what I normally do with inks and watercolors.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, that's interesting because honestly, I never really thought about it. But when you mentioned feelings down and then feeling happy, and then I was like, hey, I've noticed too, which is interesting. I think there might be other people out there in the world too who can do certain things when they're happy, and which makes sense, obviously, actually, when you think about it in sense of, I mean, in any context, there's certain things that you can do when you're happy, but you can't do when you're sad, and certain things you do better when you're sad, but you can't do when you're happy.
And um like that just reminds me, like I even right now have a sketch laying around like in my laptop, right, where I was like feeling um because when COVID hit, obviously it was quite tough on
Yeah.
everybody. Mentally, I wasn't doing too well, and I remember feeling very hopeless and helpless. And I remember doing like a sketch for that. right? It just came to me. I made a sketch and I actually ended up never finishing it because thankfully I ended up not feeling that way since then, right?
Oh, yes. Can I
So
see it? Is this the skull one?
no, no, no.
Because I've been waiting to see that skull one for the longest time
I have no idea where that is. That was like in middle school though.
ever.
So
But honestly, no. Back to what you said, yeah, I think I have certain things like that too, where I've done some writing that I've done when I've been feeling very, very, very down, but I have never returned to it because I haven't ever felt the same. Which might be a good thing, but I do have it stored if just in case I ever feel the same way again, I can return to it. Because I think this goes back to inspiration and the idea that there are certain things you can create when you are in certain moods. So there's nothing to worry about when, as our artists, when we're creating something that is not the same as something we might have created at a different time. It literally depends on you. There are individual differences
sure.
within and between.
Yeah, and that when you just brought that up for some reason in my head, I don't know if this point will make sense, but I thought of we were talking about comparison earlier, right? Like comparing our
Yes.
and when your own creation, right? Like when your art pieces or like your own writing or like whatever you create doesn't like it's different when you're happy and you're sad and it's different depending on your mood or your experiences. And if it differs like that, how can you compare your work to a completely different artist? Does that make
Yeah.
sense? You
No,
can't
that
compare your
definitely,
own
yeah,
two pieces at different times
exactly.
by you, let alone how can you compare it to another artist, right, who is completely different than you?
No, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Because there's a difference between looking at someone else's work and trying to figure out how you can improve and comparing yourself to someone else and thinking you suck.
Hmm.
I will say I do go ahead and read books. I do watch TVs and whatnot to see how other people are achieving the things I want to achieve. How are they developing their characters? How are they advancing their plots?
Hmm.
But when I start saying my plot sucks in comparison to this, then there's an issue. Because now you are comparing two different people and expecting them to create the same results and be at the same level when that's not the case. Someone might be start writing tomorrow. Someone might just start writing today, and someone who's been writing from 17 years ago might have big differences where the person who just started writing might be way better than the person who's been writing for 17 years. But see, there's no like, some people are just natural at what they do, and other people just need to work on it. But in the end, everyone's practicing and growing.
Yeah. And I think that's a very important point because it kind of leads into the discussion about the process versus the final product, right?
Yes.
Art, writing, things like this, I personally find it that I enjoy it better when it's process based, meaning when I focus on the process, when I enjoy the process,
Mhm.
right? Because when I do enjoy the process and I focus on
Yeah.
making sure that I enjoy the process, then I find that the final result doesn't matter all that much anymore because I had fun.
Exactly. No, that's a really good point because I've been having this issue with writing too, where when I would write in the past, it would be, let's get to the end of the book. Let's finish this story up so that I can edit it. But now I've been taking time to enjoy the process, taking breaks instead of rushing through it, so that even if I do get an idea, then I can add it in, you know? And I really want to mention this thing that you mentioned to me years ago. I don't know if you remember this, but this was for my first book when you read the first 10 chapters and you said you have a great start, you just need to edit, blah, blah, blah. Something along those lines where you were telling me to edit and make changes. And I was like, what is she talking about? This is my final result. And she wants me to make changes? And at that time, I was young and very naive. I did not realize that this is literally a process and it's not the final result. And so basically, thank you because you taught me about editing basically.
But I don't know what to say to that. First of all, I'm sorry that I might have, um, went about it potentially in a bit of a hurtful way.
No, it was not hurtful. It was just like, does Emily understand it's tiring? It's just, writing is sometimes tiring. When it comes to editing, writers might understand this. I mean, actually, any creator might understand this. It's a very tiring process when you literally write 100 pages and then you decide they're not good enough and you have to rewrite all those 100 pages.
Yeah, it sounds definitely like a very frustrating process.
Yeah. But no,
But
you taught me
yeah,
something valuable.
yeah, like the process is very important. And when you are so product focused, when you're so focused on the result and how the finished thing is going to look like, you might find yourself stopping to enjoy the process. Like you're no longer enjoying making the things that you used to enjoy.
Exactly. And then it becomes a chore,
Mm-hmm.
which shows in your pieces actually. I will mention this because I remember when I first wrote my book, the one you read, I had fun writing it.
Mm-hmm.
Every other time after that, when it started becoming a chore, when I started query, I can't say that word, I'm gonna skip over it. When I started sending emails to agents to show my book, and then it became a chore because now I was editing to impress those agents,
Mm-hmm.
individual preferences of those agents. It was tough. And my friends started noticing. They were like, it sounds like you're so stressed writing this book. Like the way you're writing it no longer feels the same.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And it's so challenging because as a creative person, you don't want to let go of your own style and your own preferences.
Huh.
But if you want to get published or if you do want to um, sell things, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Then there's this like fine line between um, losing your style and your preferences completely in order to satisfy a certain demographic. And then there's, I don't know, it's a rough thing because I've also dealt with the idea of, my art being something that's not enjoyed by everybody, and I'm totally okay with that. But like my art is dark, right? And it's not something that you could like give to someone as a Christmas present.
It's worthy of being put up in my room on my wall.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But like when you think about you and I have similar tastes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I recognize that my art may not appeal to a wider audience. And then there's this idea of, well, do I change it? Right? Or does it, or do I just keep going at it? But I decided that to me, success looks like creating pieces that I enjoy, right? In the processes that I see fit. So
Yes.
to you, success might look different to our viewers, right? Like it might be selling X amount of this or getting published, or it could be anything else. Honestly, success is defined differently for everybody. But I decided that for me, success was making the pieces that I enjoy. And if others enjoy it too, that's perfect. And if they don't, at least I'm having fun in the process.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. Now that we are talking on this point, I also did want to mention it's no longer the same when you start creating for someone else instead of creating for yourself. When you're creating something for yourself, the results are way different than when you're creating it for someone else. Because then you're gonna lose interest really fast. And I'm telling you this from experience because I have which many stories in the past, and some of them um I wrote because I was trying to impress someone else. And because I was trying to impress someone else, I lost interest in them way faster than I did when I was writing a story based on my own preferences and needs.
Hmm. I guess it's kind of difficult too because in this day and age where we use social media, where we do post on, say, Instagram or even YouTube right now, um, you are hyper aware of the fact that others are going to see this,
Yeah.
right? There's almost always this, at least at the subconscious level, that someone is going to see this and that you're trying to impress them, right? Like at a
Uh-huh.
certain level that exists. But I think the difference is taking it too far
Uh-huh.
versus having it that at a healthy amount.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that because like on Instagram, when I'm on Instagram, I'll see like these tropes where it's like people are like, "Oh, I love I enemies to lovers trope," and then I'm like, "Hey, I love that too. I can if I can include that in my book, that's perfect because this is something I love." I will say, as cliche as it is, that's my favorite, enemies to lovers. Um, but anyways, back to the topic. But then I might see something where it's like, "Oh, I love when character A is rude to the entire world except for their love interest." And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cool and everything, but I'm not a fan of it. So even if this is what the people want, I might not include it because that's not something I like. But sometimes I remember like, oh, hey, I can add that as like a subplot for a side character or something, and that can be it because I know that I'm going to be judged in the end by these people. So I might add these little things to be loved by them. But in the end, I think you also have to be confident in your own abilities that they will like what you put out because you love what you put out. And there might be more people who share the same interest as you in this world. So you have to consider that those people will love what you write.
Yeah, for sure. In short, don't be too pessimistic about your art or like your writing. There will always be an audience for it and there will be a right time for it.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's about everything we kind of wanted to talk about. I don't know if you have anything else you would like to add before I kind of do a very quick summary.
Um, hmm. No, I do like hearing myself talk, but at this point, I think we've covered it. If needed ever in the future, you can invite me back and we'll have
Part
another talk.
two,
Yes.
for sure. Um, so we have definitely talked about a lot of things in this episode and
Yes.
talked about comparing yourself to others. We talked about taking breaks, and we've talked about a few of the things that we ourselves do to kind of get over creator's block. Um, and we kind of talked about how your art can differ based off of your mood, your feeling, what you're going through, your environment, and so many other factors. And we've kind of concluded it with talking about enjoying the process and making sure not that you're not losing sight of what you're passionate about and what you want to do in favor of pleasing the masses.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining me. I
Thank you for
really,
having me here.
of course, like I really do appreciate your time and your, you know, opinions to this topic. And it was very interesting to hear the perspective of a writer because I'm more so on the, visual art side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I realized that there's so many things we haven't actually discussed. So this was really interesting because I got your perspective.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. Again, thank you so much for joining, and thank you all so much for watching this episode. Just a reminder, the pre-order is now live and it will be down in the description. There's a video on the channel, so please do make sure to check that out.
Yes, you don't want to miss out on Emily supporting our sneak peek into our art piece and poem. So don't forget to check that out because it is really important for you to check it out.
Yeah, and like you will see me hint write a little bit if you're interested in seeing how I
Yeah.
write.
He's amazing. Don't let it tell you otherwise.
Thank you. Well,
And I'm also an amazing artist. Emily, please tell them how well I did.
yes, and Fiza took on a new challenge where um, she was drawing, and I don't want to spoil, making
All right.
a bit of
Right, right.
art in a challenging way, in a challenging format.
Yeah, so we had a lot of fun though.
Yes, it was a lot of talking and laughing. Anyways, yeah, everything will be linked in the description. You all can check it out. And that being said, I hope to see you all soon. Hope you take care.
Bye.
Bye.